Welcome to the Lovecraft eZine podcast. Our guests today are Max D. Stanton and Tonia Ransom. Hey, guys.
Hi.
And if you're not a patron, you should be, because this is the type of treatment you get. And I'm still having tech problems, so I'm not able to keep an eye on the side chat. But Matter, can they see us? You guys type something in there if they can see us.
Well,
what are you doing? You should have this up already. So, every other Thursday night we do a non-recorded Patreon podcast, which is basically a Zoom call for the $10 and up level. You can just Google Lovecraft eZine Patreon. But Mike DeBronzo's in this dark room, he's got this candle lit, and he's in this dark room and everything. And we're just expecting some monster to just jump up and grab him out of the blue. Yeah. So I asked him if he could make sure that if he dies, that the Patreon money still keeps coming in. So he's going to get back to me on that.
That actually was a pretty good chat. You quit early. We went till 1 o'clock in the morning.
What? Really?
We sure did. It was a great chat. Yeah.
1 o'clock East Coast time. I was like, that's only 11. You guys are going to sleep already?
some of us has to work,
So that would have been midnight my time. You guys were on for 4 hours?
Yeah.
I did quit early after 2 hours. Wow.
We had a deep philosophical conversation about music and Lovecraft and a bunch of other things.
Yeah.
Okay. Just if it wasn't mentioned, Song of Cthulhu was an anthology edited by Stephen Mark Rainey, and then he also wrote a collection of stories called The Last Trumpet that deal with this issue, but he doesn't come up very much when we talk about the subject.
Matt, did you say that people can see us okay?
Yes.
All right.
Unfortunately, you still look like you. I can't fix that.
Oh, well, thank you. As long as I'm not frozen, Well,
Matt, could you send it in chat? The I guess the links to that author you were just discussing.
Stephen Mark Rainey.
He's been on that show any number of times.
Song of Cthulhu. Yeah, he's a great guy.
That was an old Chaosium anthology.
Yeah, boy, that is going way back. Yeah, so Max and Tonia, I'd like to thank both of you for being on at the same time today because of my tech problems last week and apparently still this week, but at least it's not preventing me from doing the show. So thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being on. I've got a whole slew of very grueling and hard questions for you. So
fire them up.
Yeah. So let's do introductions and then have the guests introduce themselves, and then we'll chat with them. Rich, why don't you start?
Hey, I'm just a guy who doesn't do anything except support Lovecraft eZine. But I will say that in support of Mike DeBronzo, I told him I had the mustache that he didn't have, so I would twirl it for him.
Very nice, sir. Very nice.
I hope he's seen that if he's watching.
You also watch Gomer Pyle videos all day long, apparently.
I do. I actually do.
Sean, you want to introduce yourself? You're muted, buddy.
Yeah, I just like at work, always muting myself on Zoom calls when I'm supposed to be talking. I'm Sean Hamill. I wrote the novel A Cosmology of Monsters, working on my next book now, so hopefully I'll have more to say resume-wise in the future.
Well, you could say that Stephen King read your book and really liked it. That's always good. And you also
buried the lead with that one.
What's that?
He buried the lead with that one.
Yeah, he did, didn't he?
I can say that too. It doesn't make it true.
Well, in Sean's case, it's true. You could also say that you have an awesome old Doom background going on right now. So
way more interesting than my office.
Okay, Matt.
I'm Matt.
Or Isabel, as you're going by today, apparently.
We're switching computers or something. Our prize today is from the little book series by Borderlands Press. This one is by Caitlin Kiernan. It's called A Little Yellow Book of Fever Dreams. It's signed by the author. And it's just a really neat little collection of her stories. If you want to win this, send an email to ezineprizes@gmail.com. Put yellow in the subject heading. In a few weeks, we will have a winner drawn randomly.
Awesome. You did great, Matt. I don't care what Pete says. You do great. So, who do we got left? We've got, let me flip my video over here. Oh my God, John Langen's here.
What? Where? That guy owes me money.
Wow, you just got out of the shower, didn't you?
No, I just always look this good.
Did you have a nice day the other day on Twitter? Laird really grabbed.
Laird Barron engaged in systematic harassment of me. I reported you to what's his name, the Jack guy in charge of Twitter, and I'm sure that at any minute he will treat the two of you as effectively as he's treated all those other complaints about other politicians we shall not name.
Well, yeah, all I did was start it. Laird, I don't know. He must have been on some uppers that day or something. So
it's hard to tell with Laird. You know, he could just be chewing a raw cactus or something like
that. Bridget, how about you?
Hello, I'm Bridget. I write music and draw and paint things.
Oh, she also makes things like this.
Yes,
cool.
Music boxes of the macabre.
Yeah.
That's pretty freaking awesome.
It is, isn't it?
Aw,
And
thanks.
if you just go to the Lovecraft eZine website and click on podcasts on the top left, then after you scroll down after the list of guests, you'll see all the panelists, and I hyperlink them to like either if they're an author, their books, or in Bridget's case, to our website, for example. So if you want something like that, that's how you get it. Pete. Except for Langen, I don't hyperlink him to anything. I don't want to sell any of his books.
Oh, don't I know it? Yeah.
Yeah. Pete.
Hey, I'm Pete Rollick. I used to write books. Now I just write cover blurbs for people like John Langen. And
Did you?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. We had to cut it. It was like basically a short novel in and of itself.
Exactly.
We had to just cut it. He was just like,
Ross asked for 3 lines, and I wrote him 100,000 words.
And he was like, Ross, will you publish this instead of John's book? And Ross was like, I would, but John's is already we printed it, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Pete.
You're welcome.
Hey, I sold some of your books too, John. I felt so bad about Laird.
Like on eBay, is that what you're saying?
No, I linked to the Amazon page. Don't you ever read the emails I send to you, or do you just have them like?
I have you blocked.
Yeah.
You're on a list of people I have blocked. It's an increasingly long list.
Laird's on the list now too, I bet.
Oh, you bet. I don't know how he still gets through.
No, so for those who don't know, what happened was time.
Don't try to spin this. No.
I'm just gonna
let them find out on their own.
I'm just gonna
afterwards.
Not everyone
like, oh my
is on
God,
Twitter,
I can't believe
sir.
I was on that show.
Not everyone is on Twitter. They may need to be. So the other day I tweeted, Time Magazine had, here's our 4 finalists for Person of the Year. So I posted a picture of John and I said, once again, John Langen is not Time Magazine's Person of the Year. With
like he rubs it in, right? Like it isn't painful enough that they didn't pick me.
Right.
And Davis has to rub it in.
Well,
that's fine.
I'm trying to call
Totally
attention to it so that maybe next year it's corrected.
No, because now you put them on the spot. So now they can't do it next year, right?
Oh, really?
Because if they do, they lose face. And everybody's like, oh, you're just bowing to pressure from the Mike Davis.
And then everybody thinks they can just be Person of the Year.
Exactly. They think all they need is Mike Davis
Tonya.
to just call attention to it. No, thanks a lot, Mike. No,
so Barron jumps all over it and says stuff like, that's the face he makes when I tell him I'm going to move in again. And that's the face that he makes. That was
really funny.
Yeah, when I tell him that there's already books about fishermen and they actually sell, shit like that.
Nice that you remembered that one. That was good. Yeah.
After that, I thought, oh shit, I got to do something about this. So I went to the big Lovecraft eZine page and posted the fisherman. And if you read,
nobody noticed. They were all just like Laird.
Oh no! They noticed. You got some very nice comments there. And if you read any emails from me ever, you would have that link and would know.
Don't try to. It's bait and switch, man.
And your spirits would be buoyed from it.
No, there's nothing buoyed. It's going down like the Titanic.
Anyway.
I'm Leo, you're Kate. It's not looking too good for me.
Oh, look, you got another victim. I got the live chat on my phone, and Phil Jones says The Fisherman is a great read. So you have at least one fan watching.
Wow,
which
that's
is more
one.
than.
Thanks, Phil. I appreciate it. You're nice.
You know what, John? That makes you person of the week, if not man of the year.
Person of the week. That's what kind of weak sauce is that, Rich? Come on, man. Yeah.
Well, I've certainly already talked to you more than I usually do. So
I know. It's a little uncomfortable, to be quite honest. Yeah.
Did I get everybody in the introductions except for the guests?
Yeah, you could say he got the participation person of the year.
Yeah. There you go.
He gets a little ribbon.
Wow. Thanks a lot, Dr. Carpenter. Thanks.
Yeah. I'm gonna go ahead and focus on the guests now. Tonia, could you give us tell us about yourself?
Sure. I'm Tonia Ransom. I am the creator and executive producer of Nightlight, a horror podcast that features creepy tales written by Black writers from all over the world. I'm also a writer myself, and my debut novella came out last Tuesday. It's called Risen.
I noticed that. I'm going to ask you about that. Yeah.
Excellent.
So, I should call myself the executive producer of this show. It's more meaningful than the title I already have, which is, I don't know what job I have. When people ask me what I do for a living, I'm like, I'm not sure what to call it. Max.
Now you are.
Wait, Tonia, do you actually have cassettes behind you? Is that what I'm seeing?
No books. Okay. Lots and lots.
Oh, okay, good. My eyesight's bad.
Oh, thank God. We were going to have to kick you off the show if you had.
Also, Pete is drunk already, so just keep that in mind throughout the show. Yeah.
That's fine. I've got some spiked hot cocoa right here. Oh, and this is art
really
drawn by my son on this cup.
Nice.
So
nice.
How old is your son?
He'll be 11 at the end of this month.
Nice.
I used to love those Christmas presents you would get from my younger son. They would do they design a mug, and then Christmas morning you would open it. And my son is now 17 and a half. And I said to my wife, I kind of miss those mugs. And she was like, come on.
Actually, I've had that same thought. My son just turned 18, so in front of me, this is from 10 years ago, but I have a little notebook where he wrote when he was real little, like 7 or 8 little notes to me, like, I love you, Dad, and you're the best dad in the universe, and you're a much better father than Langan or anybody else. And things like that. So
you were like, you will write these notes, son, because I will read them someday.
On the show.
Stop.
Max, could you tell us about yourself?
Sure. I am a librarian, a writer, and a pit bull wrangler in beautiful Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. My debut short story collection, A Season of Loathsome Miracles, just came out from Trepidatio Publishing this summer.
All right. Well, I'm going to... Yes.
Where in Philadelphia?
West Philly, also known as the best Philly.
The fresh Philly.
Yeah.
Where are you from? You're in Austin, Tonia.
I'm in Austin, Texas.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
You might be the only part of Texas that remains with us.
Yeah.
It'll be like Berlin. We'll have to do airdrops.
Yeah, I saw that.
Music,
I saw that on Twitter. Texit or something.
Oh yeah. That happened when Obama got the president. I mean, it
happens. Yeah.
Texas does this like every year, basically, for one reason or another. But yeah, anytime I travel outside of Austin, I'm like, oh my God, this state.
Oh yeah, I don't even think that Austin is part of Texas, really.
It doesn't feel like part of Texas.
Own little kingdom.
Especially like with the masks and things, like people here wear their masks and, practice the social distancing and all of that. But man, you go anywhere else in Texas and I mean, people have masks under their chins or no masks at all. And it's terrifying.
I'm doing a good job today of losing all my Texas viewers. So
it's my fault. It's my fault. I'm the one that's bad-mouthing Texas, but I can. It's like, you can bad-mouth your own family, but nobody else can.
Yeah, good point.
I wish someone would have explained that to my family, but anyway.
Well, Linda Addison messaged me today because she had COVID and she's having a hard time recuperating from it, like I was. And I said, you messaged. I noticed that you have a story on. I had noticed. I didn't say this to her, that she had a story on your podcast, Tonia, and she said her show Nightlight did a magnificent production of my story, The Power. So
I love Linda. Like she was one of my first people that like I really wanted on the podcast for a really long time. And like I talked to her at a conference and I got one of her stories and like I was totally fangirling and I took a picture and my eyes were closed, but I still kept it because it's a picture with Linda Addison. Well, yeah. I'm not going to delete it just because my eyes were closed. Linda's in it. She's got her eyes open. It's fine. But that's amazing to hear from her. I mean, she did tell me that as well afterwards, but it's nice to hear that she's spreading the word to others as well. She's a lovely human being.
You know what? She's one of my favorite people. I really do like Linda a lot.
Yeah.
She's just a good person and a very talented writer. Now more people are saying they like The Fisherman. What did I do?
They're thinking about that other fisherman.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about
Wait, what about Sean? He didn't introduce himself.
Yeah, he did. You were late.
Did he? Wow, I guess I'm drunk too. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll introduce myself again after the show.
Okay.
So it's not Nightfall, it's Nightlight podcast, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It's you describe it, I think, on the podcast as a black horror podcast. Is that correct?
Yes.
Can you tell us about, why did you start this? I mean, I'm sure we all have some idea, but your reasons for starting this and what you want to accomplish with this podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, you know that I love old time radio.
Yes.
And I was a longtime listener of old time radio. I actually found it in adulthood. So before iPods were a thing, but like when iTunes was a thing, you could listen to radio stations online. And so I discovered old time radio and I was like, oh my God, this is an awesome medium. Like I would love to revive this. But I was working in tech at the time and I was like, I don't have any radio contacts, podcasts weren't a thing. So it wasn't like I could just, go and create a show. And then, years went by and then podcasts became a thing. And I was like, oh, I could do the old time radio thing now. Like it's much easier, but I don't have the time or money. So, I put it off. And then finally, one year I was like, I'm never going to have the time and money to do this. Like I just need to decide to do it and get it done. And so I decided I was going to start a podcast. I wanted to do a full cast audio production, but I knew I did not have the money or the resources for that. So I figured that I would do like a fiction podcast where it's narrated stories and I would still have sound effects and things like that. So it felt more like an immersive experience, but it wasn't a full cast production. And I kind of landed on only doing work written by Black writers and only having Black actors voice the stories because Fireside Fiction came out with a report showing that something like 2% of published fiction was by Black writers. Now in the United States, Black people make up 13% of the population. So obviously there's a massive gap there.
Yes.
And I belong to a writers group of Black writers. And so, we were talking about this report from Fireside Fiction. And I was like, why is your work getting rejected? Like, what are people saying to you? And, aside from the story has an issue kind of thing, a lot of it was this story is not Black enough, or this story is too Black, or we don't think audiences will really connect with this voice, was something that a lot of them heard. I mean, we're talking like published writers, some of them New York Times bestsellers. We're hearing this as rejections for their work, both before and after they became best-selling authors. And I felt like, hey, this is a place where I can really make a difference. A lot of people are looking for work written by people of color and other minorities, not just people of color. Mm-hmm. But I felt like this was something that I could comfortably do. Like I would not feel right editing a podcast that was full of queer work because I'm not queer. I can't read that work and do it justice, but I'm Black. I can read that work. I can understand it. I can do it justice. And so that's kind of what I ran with. And just, I was like, I don't know if people are going to listen to this. So I started an Indiegogo campaign and raised like $2,000 for my first season. And I was like, oh, people actually do want to pay to hear these stories. This is great. And I just kept going with it because people kept thinking that it was important enough to share their money with me to do.
Yeah, that must have been encouraging when the
Indiegogo. Yeah, it was super encouraging.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about old time radio for a second. Because the way I discovered it, and I'm going to assume that I'm significantly older than you. No smart remarks, Matt. In the 80s, there was a station in Des Moines where I lived called KRNT, and at night, at 10:30 at night they would broadcast an hour of old time radio. 2 shows basically. So that, and you never knew what it was going to be. It could be suspense, could be horror, could be comedy. The Man Called X, or it could be suspense, or it could be Fibber McGee and Molly. So, and that's how I discovered old time radio. Of course,
like, let's be clear here. They weren't doing that because they were nostalgic. They were doing that because it was cheap space filler.
Yeah. And in the public domain, even then, I'm assuming. So
close to it.
Yeah. So I told you I was going to ask you this question because I don't want to hit you with it from out of the blue. But your favorite show is The Whistler, right?
Yes.
Okay.
It is.
So that's not a show that comes up. And in fact, I did a Scariest Old Time Radio Shows blog post several years back, and I haven't listened to The Whistler all that much, but I was on Wikipedia today and noticed that they even made it into a film noir series.
Yeah.
So
I actually have not watched any of the film series, but it's like, for me, The Whistler is a lot like The Twilight Zone, like a predecessor to The Twilight Zone. Like, suspense is really great. Weird Circle, like all of those shows are, really great, but I feel like The Whistler in particular has that voice that reminds me a lot of Rod Serling and how he approached things. The sort of the twisty endings and things like that. Not all of them had twist endings. A lot of them were, straight up detective type procedural episodes, but a lot of them had twist endings, and just the way the material was presented was, very noir. So I love the feel of that show more than any other show.
Well, I mean, I have listened to a couple, but it's been a long time ago. That wasn't my main. That show is not my main focus either. So I'm going to have to listen to some more. But having said that, what do you think some of the scariest episodes of old time radio are? Because this is free entertainment, and it's such quality entertainment,
Yeah.
So.
My favorite episode of old time radio is actually not The Whistler. It's from Suspense, and it's a show called Sorry, Wrong Number.
Oh yeah.
And it starred Agnes Moorehead, who played the mother-in-law on Bewitched, but obviously this was before Bewitched. And the whole premise of the story is, so they used to have these things called party lines. Even I remember party lines. So, like, if you're younger than me, or maybe you don't, but I remember party lines where
some people in the audience are like going, "What? Say what?
Yeah, what are party lines?
You had phones that connected to the wall?"
Right. Yeah, we had phones that connected to the wall, and we shared a line with people we didn't even know. I mean, they were our neighbors, so we kind of knew them, but like some of some of your neighbors were like, But yeah, I mean, you pick up the phone and you would hear someone else having a conversation, so you'd hang up and wait until they finish their conversation, and then you could make your call. So the premise of this story is that there's this woman who's basically an invalid, and she's stuck at home, and she's got a nervous disorder. She's got nerves, like they termed it, back in the day. And she picks up her phone, and there's this call that she's listening to, and it's these people who are plotting a murder. These men are plotting murder. So of course, she's completely freaked out by the fact that, she's overhearing these people plotting a murder. And so, she tries to get a hold of the relevant authorities, and tragedy ensues. I'll just leave it at that because I don't want to spoil it for anyone who does want to listen to it.
It is a great episode. Yeah.
Yeah. I actually rewrote a modern version of the story, I suppose. I was taking a creative writing class, and we had this exercise that we had to do where we had to write a story using only dialogue. And so I thought, I'll write a story that takes place over text messages. And I had in my head that I wanted to call it Sorry, Wrong Number, just as like an homage to that.
This isn't the one on Twitter, is it? Because I want to bring that up later.
No,
okay.
This one's, but it is on Nightlight. You can listen to it on Nightlight. It's called Sorry, Wrong Number.
Okay.
Anyway, so I wrote the story as an exercise, and then I kind of remade it into something that would work better for just prose and then eventually audio. It's kind of, it doesn't have anything to do with the original Sorry, Wrong Number, but it was inspired by it. So I would love it if people gave it a listen. It's my favorite thing out of everything I've written.
Do you have a search tab or whatever at Nightlife? It's not Nightlife. It's Night.
Nightlight. I do not.
Nightlight, yeah.
I do not, but I can tell you which episode number it is.
Okay.
Give me just a moment.
Well, while you do that,
It's in season 2.
Season 2?
Mm-hmm.
Well, while you look for that, and feel free to interrupt me, but here's real quick for those of you who are listening or watching and you like old time radio, or you like audio drama, which is with actors and everything, like we've been talking about, not an audio book reading. My 5 are very quickly Nightfall. Did you ever listen to that show, Tonya?
I did, but I don't really remember any particular episodes from it.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd call it old time radio, but it's from the 90s. It was a Canadian show. It's an episode called The Porch Light, which is one of the scariest episodes of audio drama I've ever heard.
Ooh,
and then Suspense, The House in Cypress Canyon. You're probably familiar with that one.
That's also one of my favorites.
And I actually have 2 from Quiet Please. One's called Northern Lights, which is somewhat Lovecraftian. And one is called There Are Shadows Here, which is really, really creepy. And then The Hall of Fantasy, The Shadow People. I'm sure you're familiar with that one too. Or maybe you are.
Actually, I have not heard that one.
Have you listened to any of The Hall of Fantasy?
No, I don't think so, actually.
Yeah, it's really good. I think it's from the early 50s. But anyway, when they were first starting, they were trying to find their footing. But the episodes that are really good are the ones that start off with, welcome to the Hall of Fantasy, and they're doing the drums in the background and everything. So bear that in mind if you haven't listened to any of them. But the best one is The Shadow People. And then Vincent Price, of all people, did an audio drama called The Price of Fear. I think it was.
Did they make that into a movie as well, though?
I don't know if they have.
Or maybe they just took that name and it was like a documentary about Vincent Price or something.
It could be. Yeah, well, in some of the episodes, he's playing a fictional version of himself, which sounds really dumb, but it's not.
Vincent Price, so of course he nailed it.
Oh, yeah, good stories. I think my favorite episode, this is what I have down, is an episode called Fish. So for whatever that's worth, if anyone out there is looking for some free entertainment, there you go. Talk to us about the format of the podcast.
And it's season 2, episode 13.
Oh, okay. Thank you. All right. Season 2, episode 13. Sorry, wrong number. Right?
Yes.
What's the format of your podcast?
So generally what I do is I have a little intro where I talk just very briefly about the story, like, 1 sentence about kind of what it's about and what you can expect. And I thank my patrons, things like that. Then we go into the story, which is narrated by someone, and then there are sound effects and atmospheric music layered underneath the narration. And then I do like another outro saying, hey, please give me your money so that I can keep doing this. Basically begging people. And then at the very, very end, the last thing I do is I read a creepy fact for people who stick with the episode until the very, very end. And it's always cool. Some weird thing I found online that's somehow related to the episode. Like this last
Tonya,
season.
What a great idea.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Thank you. I actually got it from Ologies. I don't know if you guys listen to the Ologies podcast. It's about science, and it's Allie Ward, and she interviews all of these scientists of various fields. And one of the things that she does at the very end of her episodes is she gives like a fact about herself. Like, like this one episode I just listened to was that during the wintertime, she doesn't really like match her socks together properly because she wears boots. So it doesn't matter if her socks match. And so that was the fact that she gave people, just something really random about herself. And, I was like, I don't think I'm interesting enough to give random facts about myself. But I thought, hey, people are listening to a horror podcast. Like they like creepy stuff. So I'll do creepy facts. And like I said, they're always related to the episode. This past season, I did an episode where there was this haunted doll, basically. And so my creepy facts were about haunted dolls, like real haunted dolls or legends of them, if you don't necessarily believe that that's something that's possible.
My wife would love that. Creepy dolls and mannequins. No, you'd really creep her out.
Oh yeah, those are my favorite kind of stories, aside from like, haunted house gothic style.
Well, she's got this doll that she played with when she was a little girl, and for some reason now it creeps her out. So my son and I keep hiding it in various locations around the house. One time we like put it under the covers, and she's like brings the covers down to go to bed, and there's the doll, and she's yelling at us. So
that's awesome. I've always hated dolls. Always thought they were creepy. My mom was a hospice worker, like an in-home hospice worker. And during the summertime, like she would take my sister and I with us to, whomever's house that she was at taking care of them. There was this one woman that I loved so much, but she had like literally a room full of dolls, like old dolls. Like,
was her name Ellen Datlow? Because Ellen's got.
She does. I did not know that about her.
Oh my God! And yeah, she's got dolls everywhere.
But yeah, I don't like dolls. I always found them really creepy. I'd walk past the room and all the dolls I would feel like the dolls were staring at me. And I just the creepiest feeling from that room. And like one time I went in the room and I didn't have a great feeling. I left. Yeah, I'm sure that they were. That's probably right around where my love of horror got started, because I started making up stories in my head about those dolls.
Ellen actually did an anthology with dolls recently, didn't she? John, do you remember the name of that?
Oh, look at you with the doll.
Yeah. Oh, that's Pete. He's a doll.
Yeah. My favorite doll story though is by Daniel Jose Older, Skin Like Porcelain Death, and it's published on Tor for free, so anybody can read that glorious piece of literature. It's an amazing story.
Kind of a romantic comedy type of thing, probably.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Guys, please jump in. I don't want to hog all the questions for Tonia, so if you got a question for her, just interrupt me mid-sentence or whatever you want to do.
That's the doll that we normally torture our children with. Every once in a while, we'll just put it out in the hallway. And the kids will just freak out.
I didn't see the doll, Pete. Wait a minute. Where is it? Oh, hang on. I want to pin you on the screen. Leave that up there. Oh, that is a creepy doll.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's creepy. How often does the podcast air?
We air bi-weekly, February through October. We do episodes weekly in October, though, and then a Halloween special on Halloween Day.
So roughly twice a month.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. All right. You started the podcast, 2 years ago? Is that right?
Yeah, June 2018.
Okay. This is a dangerous question. I don't want to ask you.
2017. I'm questioning myself now. I'm sorry.
Oh, no. You're fine. In the last 2 or 3 years, we can say that the podcast started.
Yes.
This is a dangerous question, so I'll phrase it like this. I'm not going to ask your favorite story that you've produced, but are there any that stand out in your mind that you're just like, oh, I'm really glad I got this one, or that sort of thing?
Yeah. So this past season, I got a story from Tananarive Dew called "Last Stop on Route 9," and I can imagine this as a Twilight Zone episode. The premise of the story is that this woman goes back to the South, Florida in particular, for her grandmother's funeral. And as she's kind of driving away, she enters this sort of alternate reality where things are not quite what they seem. Nice. And it was an amazing story to get. I mean, I'd wanted Tananarive Dew on the podcast for forever, since it started, basically.
Yeah.
You have your list of people that, you really like, you're like, I have to get this person. And, she was one of the ones on the list.
Nice.
And, to get that story and for it to be like such a Twilight Zone kind of story, because that's really what I go for with the podcast is I try to find stories that I could imagine as Twilight Zone episodes, because I love the Twilight Zone. It's my favorite show of all time. I've seen the episodes billions of times, it feels like sometimes, but that's my goal.
What's the name of that Twilight Zone episode? I've even got it on my Twitter background. The 3 astronauts that come back from space. You remember that one?
There are a few of them, but is it the one where they disappear one by one?
Yeah.
I cannot remember the name of that episode.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's one.
That's my favorite one, and I think it's a really great example of cosmic horror.
Yeah.
That you're just a pawn, that something out there is moving around if it feels like doing it. So,
yeah,
and can alter reality. It's a great episode. Let's see here. Why don't you talk about your book, Risen. It just came out last Tuesday. This Tuesday?
Just came out last Tuesday. Yeah. I'd been working on it for about 10 years.
Oh, wow.
Off and on. It was a really hard thing for me to write. So my dad died 10 years ago, or it'll be 11 years ago next, or 12 years ago next month. And, it was kind of like a long drawn out thing. And, I hadn't written for a really long time. I was working in tech. And so I was, really focused on that. And I was on a computer all day and I didn't feel like writing when I got home. But after he died, I kind of reevaluated things. It really bothered me that he wouldn't be able to see me write a book, because that was something that I'd always dreamed of doing. So I decided that I didn't want that to happen with my mom too. And so I was like, I'm going to write a book. And so I started to write this book, and about halfway through, I realized it was my way of processing what happened with my dad. He'd gotten into a car accident, had a brain injury, had surgery. Surgery went fine, but then he started having seizures. And he had kidney failure, so he was also on dialysis. So they're giving him seizure medication to prevent these seizures, but then they're also giving him dialysis, which pulls all of that medication out of him, and so then he'd start having seizures again. So basically, he was kind of trapped in his own body. And, I don't know if he was aware of what was going on around him, but I mean, he would wake up and kind of look around, but it wasn't like he was there, if that makes sense. Yeah. And so the book is about this woman who, she's an ER doctor. So she is, very much a scientist, doesn't believe in magic or, any of that phooey. Until she dies, and then she learns that there's an afterlife, and so she's like, what the hell? Like, I thought it was just going to be the end, and now she's walking around as a ghost. But then she meets somebody who raises her from the dead, and she becomes a zombie, but not like the our eat brains kind of zombies, more like the Haitian folklore zombie, wherein you're raised from the dead and someone else is controlling all of your actions. So it was about her kind of being trapped in her own body with no agency at all to figure out a way to escape this. And like I said, halfway through, I kind of realized it was my way, subconsciously, I think, of processing my dad being, locked into his own body as well. And so I put it down because, like, once I knew what I was doing with it, it was just too painful to write anything else on it. So I put it down for a really long time, even though, like, I'd gone to writers groups and other people had been reading this and they were like, you got to keep writing this. This is great. So I stopped going to writers groups because I didn't want to hear these people telling me that I needed to keep writing this thing. And then, like, eventually I got myself into therapy and realized that I had PTSD from him dying, which was part of why it was so difficult for me to actually face things head on. And then once I started to work through that and manage my PTSD, I was able to go back and start working on it and chipping away at it little by little by little. And, eventually I finished it, and now it's out in the world, and I'm terrified that people are going to hate it. So I'm just scared of different things now.
It must feel great, though, that after all that time, you've got it out there.
It does. It feels like a relief to have it done and out there in the world. But, but it's so personal to me. And, I never stopped to really think about it until, I hit go on, uploading everything, that people are going to read this and they're going to have opinions on it, and they're going to share those opinions with me. And I don't want to hear the bad opinions, just because it is so personal. And, as a writer, those of us who are writers know that anything that you write, you're going to see the flaws in it. And, I know it's not perfect. I know that there are flaws. I know that, if I had like an endless amount of time, there are things that I would fix, and that book still wouldn't be out in the world because I'd still be fixing things. But, I do think it's good. I just, I know some people are not going to think it's good. And, like, I know that it's not for everybody, and that's fine. But again, it's so personal that, it's going to be really difficult to see people kind of tear it apart.
Just in case anyone missed the name of the book, it's called Risen, Risen, by Tonia Ransom, Ransom. So it's on Kindle. It's on Kindle Unlimited, actually, I noticed.
It is.
So that's great.
And I'm working on the paperback version now. It should be out in a couple weeks.
Okay, great. Yeah, because you're putting yourself out there, so it's scary. But you can go to what you might consider a classic, the best book of all time. And look at it on Amazon, and there's going to be 1-star reviews.
Oh yeah.
So, in that light.
Yeah. Yeah, like in my head, I know all of these things, but in my heart, it's going to feel like it's an attack on my dad, so.
I think I can see what you mean.
Yeah.
So, speaking of your writing, if you go to Tonia's Twitter, I noticed this, which is, what's your Twitter? It's
Missdefying, MISSDEFYING.
Yeah, as in miss somebody, misdefying.
Yes.
So your pinned tweet is, I'll never take a nap again. And this is from several years ago, but I started reading this and I'm like, Jesus, this stuff is creepy. So I just want you to know, you are a good writer. I haven't read Risen yet, but I've read this and you are a good writer.
Thank you very much.
I'm only going to read the first few tweets here because I want people to discover this for themselves. But if that's okay. So here's the first tweet. So I took a nap on Saturday. I'm reasonably sure it'll be my last nap ever. Second tweet. When I woke up, there was blood all over the throw I was using as a pillow because I didn't intend to fall asleep. Here's the next tweet. I mean, there was a lot of blood, so I figured it was a nosebleed. I've never had one, but I knew they were bloody. So I go to the bathroom, this is the next tweet, to wash my face and see this. And there's a picture of you with blood on part of your face.
Yeah.
And then, this is probably the last one I was going to, I'm going to read a couple more. So, of course, I take a picture because it was weird, but also kind of cool. And that's when I see this, pictures of me sleeping. And you've got a whole bunch of pictures of you sleeping, which, I'm putting myself in the shoes of the storyteller, you, and thinking, I wake up and all these pictures of me sleeping on my phone, I'll be like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
And the next tweet is, now I was home alone. Hubby took the kid to a skate park and to run some errands. There was no one home but me and the dog. So that's all I'm going to read, but you really should check it out because it's a very creepy story, and I loved it. So
thank you so much.
Yeah, and again, that's MISSDEFYING, right?
Yes.
On Twitter. What's Nightlife?
Nightlight?
Well, I thought I saw some. Okay. Did it start off as Nightlife? Because this is where I got confused. Okay. Well, maybe I'm just old then. Yep. Well, there's no maybe about that. I think I read in an interview where part of your goal is to also, Black writers that haven't been discovered or that maybe people have forgotten about and so forth, that you wanted to get that out there. Can you give me one or two examples of that?
Yeah, I got a really good story this past season by Craig Lawrence Gidney called Desiccant. That is about these tiny little moth-like vampires that invade basically the projects and eat people little by little. And, nobody cares because these are poor, mostly Black people. So everybody is just kind of like, whatever, it's no big deal. Like, we're not fixing it. The apartment complex or whatever is, not interested in dealing with this problem in any way, shape, or form. But Craig is an amazing, amazing writer.
Yes.
And, I've seen them just get a lot of opportunities in the last few weeks, really. Like, their careers really taking off. And I'm not saying that I think that it's because of Nightlight, they've been working really hard for a long time. And
every little bit helps, though.
Yeah, every little bit helps. But, I think that Craig is definitely a writer that everybody should be watching.
I had him and Linda on a podcast recently. It was really great talking with them, and Chelsea Burke. So everyone too. Who are you reading right now?
I'm reading a lot of nonfiction right now because I'm also a juror for the Shirley Jackson Award. So I'm reading a lot of fiction because of the Shirley Jackson Award.
Oh yeah, so
and I don't know if I'm like at liberty to talk about what I'm reading, so I don't want to mention
gotcha.
any of that just yet. I think I am, but I don't want to take the chance.
Yeah, I don't see why not. Tonia. You could.
Oh, you would know, yeah.
No, I mean, it's as long as you're not like, I'll tell you who the winner is.
Right. Yeah, I have no idea who the winner is going to be yet.
Or I'll tell you who the winner isn't,
Right.
Langan.
Yeah. But yeah, actually the books that are on my little refrigerator there to the left here, I'll point. Those are the books that I am reading for the Shirley Jackson Award. Some of them. Anyway, and I so far I'm enjoying, what is it called? Shadows and Tall Trees.
Oh yeah. That's Undertow,
Michael
isn't
Kelly's anthology series.
Yeah. So I'm really enjoying that one, and the other one is Grotesquerie.
Oh yeah, Richard Gavin.
Also,
he was just on a few weeks ago. That's a great book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm making my way through the list, so I'm sure that there will be more as time passes on. But
yeah, both of those are Undertow. Do you want to announce now that Langan's not making the cut on the Shirley Jackson Awards, or you want to wait?
Well, I don't know. Do you have any short fiction? Because I'm only doing short fiction and novellas. I don't think I have anything from you yet.
As one of
Langan short fiction.
When we founded the award, all the founders agreed that our work would not be considered.
Well, there we go.
Just because there's no good way to have that happen.
Yeah.
Like maybe if you leave and like 10 years later or something like that, but even then people are going to be like, the only reason, and which is kind of a shame, because some of the people, like Paul Tremblay and Sarah Langan, absolutely have written stuff that I think would qualify for it, but it's
for sure. I was wondering why I wasn't getting anything from Paul Tremblay.
I also, it's just because I'm not going to be mean to Paul. The world does that enough.
Well, yeah, I mean there are other awards where people involved with the process win, and it's
it just doesn't look good. I mean, even if the work is worthy of it, I mean, I wouldn't want to win an award that way, because even if that it was good and that the people reading it, worked to be impartial, I mean, we're all human. We can't be completely unbiased and impartial. I think I would have a really difficult time, like, if Linda Addison's work, came across as like one of the ones, I would have a really hard time, saying no. Like, I know, if it were bad, I think I could say no, but I think that, no matter how much I tried to be impartial, I would still, push her further along than I might if I didn't know her. I was super conscious about trying not to do it,
Yeah, I didn't know that, John, but that's a good policy. And it probably has to hurt a little bit sometimes for those who've been involved, but it's still a good policy.
Well, it depends why you're putting the award together. Is the award for you, or is the award for other people?
Yeah.
And I was like, the award is for us, and I was voted down. So we've just had to stick with that since then. So
see, now you just got to create another award.
Not only do I not win Times Man of the Year, I also I don't win the Shirley Jackson Award. It's just
on the plus side, there'll be the new award is being created called the Langan. So
I will get it.
Award.
You know what though? They formed the Langan Award, and Sarah Langan would get it. And I'd be like, oh, come on, man.
That would be the ultimate troll. We have to do this. Just like every year, the Langan Award, it's always Sarah Langan.
Well, when Sarah first when she started publishing and just burst onto the scene, and she was really successful, I was like, damn it! When I sold my soul to the devil, I should have specified John Langan.
Yeah, it's in the details, John. You got to be careful.
That you keep telling me that, and I should listen to a man of your age and wisdom.
Oh, great! Yeah, that's nice. Anyone else have questions for Tonia?
I do actually.
Yes.
Rich. I'll just preface this by saying, so we've talked about old-timey radio, especially as kind of resurrected via podcasts, right? Mm-hmm. We haven't really talked about audiobooks, but there is a performance element to some audiobooks when they include, music, etc., into the reading, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we've got pure literature, and then we've got film, right? So if I were to ask you, what is horror to you? Would that be a different answer depending on what medium I'm talking about?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'll ask you, what's horror for you, say, for literature, and then what's horror for you, say, in radio?
Okay, so in literature, I really like haunted house stories, like 100%. I like reading about a series of creepy things that happen, and they get, they escalate as time goes on, as any good work of literature does.
So you must have liked Bly Manor then.
Oh, I loved it. I loved it. Actually, the Netflix sent me a box of things for Bly Manor, like a promotional thing that they did. It was like, like the peak of my career. I'm like, it's like the greatest thing that's ever going to happen to me.
Really?
It came with like a lighter that said "dead doesn't mean gone" and like a little mask. If for those of you who've seen the show, like all of this stuff is relevant to the show in some way. There's like a little mask, a little poppet.
I enjoyed it even more than Hill House.
Yeah, I thought it was better than Hill House.
Me too.
As well.
But that's the film, not necessarily the literature.
Yeah, but that's the film. But yeah, the literature.
I know. I'm sorry, I threw that in.
I love The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson.
Derailing the conversation
for literature. There's this book by Sherry Priest. I think it's called The Family Plot. That's about this family that renovates houses. And they have to go and renovate this house. And of course it's haunted, but their business is going under, so they can't stay at a hotel. So they're having to stay in this haunted house while they're renovating it, or they're tearing it down. They're doing something with it. I can't remember exactly. It's been so long since I read it. But that was a really, really good book. And, I really enjoy creepy stories more than anything, which I guess is probably why I like haunted house type tales. But, for me, like the scary thing in literature is creepy things happening that get creepier and escalate as time goes on until somebody dies. It's kind of like the pinnacle of horror literature for me. In terms of like audio dramas and radios, I think using the fact that you can't see anything, which you can do in literature as well, but I think it's easier to paint part of the picture with sound. And not being able to see the monster that's coming after you is really frightening, because whatever you conjure in your imagination is going to be far scarier than anything that someone could put a visual to, which is why I think horror films are so difficult to do when they're monster films, because the minute you give that monster form, it's no longer as scary as it was without form.
Yeah, I agree.
And you have to do that in audio drama, right? And you have to give this sense of the monster, whether that's a haunted house or a werewolf or a vampire, whatever it is. You have to give the listener a sense of what that monster is like without giving them the visual. And inherently, when people can't see things, they tend to be more frightened. We're frightened of the dark because we can't see what's in the dark. So, our brains are pre-programmed to be afraid of things that we can't see. And I think that radio really exploits that really well.
Of course, there's old time radio, which is audio drama, and then there's up to the newest podcasts, which are audio drama. Mm-hmm. There's a company called Graphic Audio, and their their slogan, whatever tagline, is a movie in your mind. Which is, I've been listening to audio drama for so long, but it was the first time I heard it phrased like that, and I thought that really, really says it.
Yeah, Casey Whalen, who did We're Alive, it was one of the first horror podcasts out there. He calls it a theater for your mind.
Yeah.
He wrote a book called Bombs Always Beep, I think, about creating audio drama, and talked about, basically how to exploit the fact that we can't see what's going on, and we can only hear it, and how we have these mental constructs of what things should sound like. So even if it doesn't really sound like that, we still have to make it sound like this mental construct of the thing we think it sounds like, so that everyone kind of gets it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, in music, pure music, I think Bridget would know more so than I, but there are these bands like Nox Arcana and Midnight Syndicate who typically make music for theme parks around Halloween time, but they produce these albums, and they have done Lovecraftian albums, the kinds of things that are like soundtracks to movies that haven't been made, I think is how they, they put forth how they advertise them. And they're meant to be played if you're playing Call of Cthulhu RPG, or if you're reading Lovecraftian literature, for instance. But they've got these multiple albums, these bands with different themes. And it's another aspect, I think, of horror just from the music perspective. And it's just, it's a really exciting time to be a fan of, say, horror, fantasy, sci-fi, because the technology gives us all these varying mediums by which we can enjoy and experience this. And it gives a lot more opportunity for talent that we might not otherwise see if we were only stuck, say, with literature. Somebody who's not a good writer might be a great music artist, or they may have a great voice and be able to tell a story in a way like my grandfather could scare the hell out of me at a campfire, right? In a way that he wouldn't be able to write that, for instance. You know, it might not be as good. So it's just a really exciting time, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Anyone else have questions for Bridget before we move on to Max?
You mean Tonya? I have a question though. I'm reading my mind. Hi, Tonya.
Hi.
I was wondering, so how does that process work from when you acquire a story from an author, and then you're going to adapt that from the story to the audio drama? How long does that take? What's the process? Do you have to rehearse it? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to answer this question like I'm the narrator and the producer. I'm starting to outsource a whole lot more. So fortunately, I can just be like, you handle this part, and then I don't have to think about it. But usually when I acquire a story, I'll read it through a couple of times to make sure it's going to work for audio. One of the things that's really important in audio storytelling is the pacing. You know, if we're reading a book and we see a lot of exposition, we can just skim past it. And, you know, we can visually see like, here's a large chunk of text. Here's a large chunk of text. I don't want to read that. That looks like exposition. I'm going to go down here to this dialogue kind of thing. Well, you can't really do that in audio. You know, yeah, you can like skip ahead, 30 seconds or whatever with your podcast app. But you don't know where that 30 seconds is going to take you. It's kind of a black hole that you're going into. And you can't really be precise with where you end up. So it's easier just to listen through. So pacing is really important. So generally, I just don't accept stories that don't have pacing that works for audio. Like I get so many really good stories, really good, solid stories that just would not work well, especially for horror fiction for audio. I think people are a little more lenient in other genres like science fiction. They might tolerate slower pacing than they would in horror, but with horror, it has to be a little quicker. People anticipate it to be more thriller-ish in horror, I think. So I just generally don't accept stories that don't have the right pacing. I'm fortunate enough to get enough stories that I don't have to do the work of saying, here's what you need to fix in order for this to work for audio. And I feel bad, turning down like so many good stories. And I do say that to the authors. Anytime I reject a story, I give them a reason for why it's rejected. If it's a problem with story mechanics, then, I say that's what it is. If I say this is a really good story, it's just not a good fit for my podcast or for audio, I tell them that. I encourage them to submit it, and I'll give them a list of other places that I think might work for them, because I do want them to get that story because it's a good story. I want to read it, somewhere else. I want other people to read it. I want them to be successful. Just because it's not a good fit for my podcast doesn't mean it's not a good fit for maybe another podcast or a more traditional type media. So there's not a whole lot of editing generally that I have to do. It's more for, a lot of times when people write things, they might spend a lot of time on exposition in one place, and I'll say, okay, we got to cut this down in this particular paragraph. Like the pacing is good everywhere else, but this part drags, so we need to tighten this up just a little bit. Sometimes there's like a play on words that you need to see in order for it to work. And so, I'll call it out to them and say, okay, we've got to adjust this somehow. You've got to convey this in a different way because people can't see that, this story is named, time and again, but it's THYME instead of TIME. And if you sit there and explain that in the story, then, it's going to make it drag. So just little things like that. And I ask the author to change it to what they want. Like, I don't want to rewrite their work for them. I don't want to take that from them. If they want suggestions, I'm happy to, share them, but I don't want to, be heavy-handed and say, here, this is what this should say. Like, I'm not the writer here. This is your baby. I wouldn't appreciate someone doing that to me. So I don't do it to my authors. But I do work closely with them. If they do want suggestions or they just feel like they're lost, then yes, I'll say, here's what I would say, make it your own kind of thing. And then after that, after we do the edits, then I'll edit for, proofreading, things like that, because I do transcripts on my website for people who are hard of hearing, and for people who are learning the English language. Like I learned that there are, some listeners that listen to podcasts to learn English, and having the transcripts helps them learn English, which I totally stole and started using it to brush up on my Spanish. So
oh, wow, that's
it helped me out as well.
Yeah.
So then after it's been edited, I'll send it to a voice actor, or, if I'm the one that's acting it, I read through it a couple of times. I'll make some notes. If I think a line should be read a certain way, I'll make a note so that I remember to read it that way. Sometimes I'll do several takes on a line, and then when I'm editing the audio, I'll listen through to it and pick which one I think sounds the best, which one flows the best. But it's mostly just, reading through it a few times, and anytime you're narrating something, you're going to flub it up, here and there. So, a 30-minute recording is usually about 45 to 50 minutes raw recording. So you're cutting out like a good chunk of things that you've read just because you've made mistakes and
editing
things like
takes
that.
A lot of time.
It takes a lot of time. And then after the audio is narrated, that's when the sound design comes in. So then I'll go back through the story and I'll make comments saying, oh, there should be a door creaking open here. There should be creepy atmospheric music here, and it should reach this crescendo here, kind of thing. So, there's tons of notes on all of the stories that I do. It starts off with just edits, and then it becomes, audio notes for the voice actor, and then it becomes notes for the sound producer.
I'm really amazed that you get this out twice a month. That's really amazing.
I did not know what I was signing myself up for when I first started. So, it's kind of one of those things that I did to myself. But, now that I've done it, I can't say, oh, well, I'm just not going to do it anymore.
Yeah.
Kind of thing, which, again, is why I'm starting to involve a lot of other people in this process, because it's just not something that's necessarily sustainable for me, especially because, like I was saying earlier, I don't know if we were actually recording at that point, but my desk shifts up and down because I have terrible arm problems from being a programmer for a decade, and being on a computer, 14, 16 hours a day working. I had surgery on my elbow. I actually hurt it playing tennis, but then being on a computer just made it worse. And me being stubborn and not going to the doctor made it even worse. And so now I have permanent problems because of it. And I can't keep doing the audio editing for the podcast. My arm is just no, we're not doing this. So I'm to the point where I have to outsource it now because I'm physically incapable of doing it.
Are you always accepting submissions, or are there certain times of the year you do that?
I accept submissions on even months, but I'm thinking that I might change that for the upcoming year, just because it's kind of like drinking out of a fire hose. I'm getting so many submissions that I'm constantly reading some submissions and replying to submissions. And I do have a reader, Anya Wilson. She is amazing. I don't know what I would do without Anya. I really, really don't. But still, I still want to read all of the stories. She thinks that they're good. I want to read them too, just to make sure that I also think that they're good. And also, since I'm the one kind of editing them right now, I need to read them anyway. So when I'm, doing the second reading on them, I'll usually do an edit pass as well at that point. But yeah, there's a lot of work involved.
And I want to wrap this up and talk to Max, but just a couple more questions. My last question is, I just want to make sure this is clear for me and for any writers out there. This is a podcast that's trying to showcase Black and minority writers only, correct?
Yeah, just Black writers.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And that's good that you're doing that. So
thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
And then the last question is from Bridget, isn't it?
What? Oh.
Yes. Oh, what do you mean? Oh.
Thinking of other questions.
No, Bridget came up with this question one time, Tonya, and I was like, okay, we got to ask this of every guest from now on. So.
All right.
So I don't know how much into superhero type things we are. I know this is a horror podcast, but I just find it interesting to ask people what they think their superhero origin story would be.
Oh, okay. So my superhero origin story would probably be when I think I was a little over 3. I think my sister had been born at that point, or it was right before my sister was born. So I was around 3 years old. And I grew up in the country. My parents burned leaves during the fall, because we had so many trees. I mean, this is deep woods, East Texas. So tons of really tall trees with lots of leaves. And so leaves were everywhere. And they would, get this big pile of leaves and they would burn them. And our front yard's kind of like on a slope like this. And like I'm riding my little bike, around the fire because, I'm 3 and I'm stupid. So it's whatever. And of course, I get to the top of the hill and the bike tips over and I fall into this fire, hands first, burning leaves. My mom snatches me out.
Is this fictional or is this this really happened?
This is legit real. This actually happened to me.
Damn.
I don't have any scars from it. I guess like I was young enough that, I had superhero like healing powers of a child. But that would be my superhero origin story because my ability would be to shoot fire.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
thank you.
That is.
Thank you very much.
So the URL for the podcast is
nightlightpod.com.
Okay, nightlightpod.com.
Mm-hmm.
You're welcome to stick around. You're also welcome to leave while we grill Max with questions. So
I would love to stay to listen to Max's questions, but I have a child who's hungry.
Well, I understand.
And,
believe me, I understand.
He might have a superhero origin story if I don't go feed him.
Well, thanks for being on the show, Tonia.
Thank you for having me. I had so much fun. Thank you guys so much. Love you.
Thank you.
Bye.
And Max, thanks again for putting up with me having 2 guests on the show because of my tech problems last week. So
no problem at all. It's a pleasure when you're on to be on with a guest like Tonia.
Yeah, she's great. So you wrote a book called A Season of Loathsome Miracles by Max D. Stanton. Tell us a little bit about the book, and then I've got a really interesting question for you because I know the answer already. So
sure. So the book is a collection of short stories, writing weird horror and gruesome fiction is kind of a psychological release mechanism for me. One of the things I do to supplement therapy. And so for a few years now, I've been writing short stories and publishing them in various venues. At a certain point, I got to a point where I had sort of enough stories that had been published with a few that hadn't quite found a good home yet, but that I thought were really sort of fun and interesting. So I thought I got a good critical mass here for a collection where I could sort of put something under my own name out into the world, and hopefully people will like it.
Well, it's interesting the way that I came onto it, that I discovered your book because a guy I know, he goes by the Weirdling on Twitter. He sent me a Twitter message and he said, "Mike, you really need to check out this book. I'm reading it. It's just fantastic." And so I did, and it is. So yeah, it's just I'm telling you, I think I said this a couple of weeks ago, but when you weren't here, but there's a lot of good books that get published every year, good horror books. There really are, I mean, sincerely. But I really feel the stories in this collection are a cut above most of what I read. It's just a fantastic collection, and I think everyone should read it and buy it. Buy it and read it. Excuse me.
Thank you. No, that's wonderful to hear.
Yeah, I mean, even starting with the first story about the witch, that's just, I've never seen anything like that before. It's about, I'm not going to give any spoilers, guys, but it's about a witch who's going to be burned at the stake, and she gets revenge on those who are burning her at the stake on her way to getting burned. It's incredible. So yeah.
That was a really fun story for me to write too. That character of the witch was just such a delight to spend time with and to sort of hang out a little bit in her world and sort of see the things that she can do and the reasons why she's doing them. Of all the characters in the book, I think that she is the one that I would most like to just sort of get a beer with and hang out with.
Do you think that obviously she dies at the end of the story? I'm not giving away anything there, But have you considered or thought about revisiting her as a character for a future story, previously in her timeline?
Well, in some ways I kind of do that within the story. I don't want to get too much into what I'm talking about there for spoiler issues, but I think that with that character, as much as I liked her, as much as I enjoyed spending time with her, I also kind of feel like the story that I wanted to tell with her, I've told. And so for the future, now I bear the burden of having to come up with some new, dark and memorable oddballs.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. So I think it was Farrah Rose Smith who she's interviewed you previously, and she asked you, was there a pivotal moment when you decided to be a writer? And you said, I've been writing for as long as I can remember, but I decided to approach it seriously a few years ago when, and I'll let you finish this because this is so incredible.
Sure. So I was working a job in those days that was very, very high stress, taking up all my time. Good job in some ways, prestigious and well paying and whatnot. But on the whole, I was just sort of really stressed out and depressed and unhappy. One morning, I'm out early in the morning walking my dog around, and I'm in this sort of general stressed out state, worrying about the day and what it's going to hold, and all the various travails ahead of me. And I come across a card that's on the ground. And I actually have the card right here.
Oh my gosh!
And I flip it over. I pick it up, and it's a tarot card, the Devil from the Rider-Waite tarot deck. And so, all right,
I want to be clear about this. You just found that card laying on the ground.
Just lying on the ground. This is the sort of thing that happens in West Philly. And all right, I'm enough of a superstitious person to think maybe there's some sort of message being conveyed here. Let me check this out. So I pick up the card and I take it home and I Google it. And I found out that one of the interpretations of this card is attachments to things that are harmful to us. If you look closely here on these little male and female figures, you can see that the chains around their necks are actually loose. At any time they want, they can just pick up the chains from around their necks and walk away from all this situation. Mm-hmm. But they don't do that. They're stuck in place, not by anything that the devil is doing to them, but from their own issues, their own mental chains. They're keeping them in place. So this card is about the attachment to things that are harmful to us, the staying in places that are bad for us. And I think about this and I realize, holy cow, this refers almost perfectly to sort of how I think about my life right now. I'm in this situation that's not working for me, and now I see that I need to choose a different path and just walk away from this. So I decided that I would change career paths, that I would find something that works better for me, and that I would spend some more time doing the things that I really love and the things that are valuable to my life. One of which is writing, horror fiction in particular. And so that sort of gave me the kick in the pants that I needed to sort of change things around a little bit and reorient myself.
Of all the times I've asked a writer or an artist why they do what they do, or read it or listened to it in other interviews, that's the most unique story I've heard of why a person became a writer. That's just really cool.
Encounter with the Devil at the Crossroads.
Max, which deck did you say that was from?
Rider-Waite deck.
Is it like Arthur Edward Waite? That?
I'm not sure off the top of my head. 1 second.
While he's gone, can I just ask?
This is the pack that it comes from. This isn't related to the one that I have. This was the one from the street. This I picked up in case I ever actually wanted to do any tarot.
Oh yeah, and I'm sorry, just very quickly, could you just again? I have an awful lot of people who, in fact, way more people than watch it, listen to it, the audio only version on iTunes, Spotify, etc. Describe the card again that you found on the sidewalk.
Certainly.
Just for those who are merely listening.
Sure. So the card depicts a big fat Baphomet with a frowny face and a long beard,
devil-looking guy, yeah,
body, who is just sitting on this throne with this male and female devil figures who are chained up at his feet, very Leia in Jabba's palace like. And,
that paints the picture perfectly, actually.
They're wearing slightly less clothing, but not by much.
Right. And the chains around their neck are loose.
Yes, yeah. There's enough space to wiggle out if one feels so inclined.
And do you have any idea at all why Matthew Carpenter is posting recipes on the Zoom side chat? I mean, that you don't know? Okay. I'm looking at the side chat. I'm like, what the hell is going on here?
You can always use a good chicken recipe. So.
Yeah, and it's all the tarot cards as chicken recipes.
Okay. Oh, really? Okay.
If you get the devil, that's a certain kind of chicken recipe, and if you get the tower, that's another kind of the lovers.
Devil is maybe the extra spicy recipe.
Exactly, some kind of Diablo kind of thing, right?
So, yeah. Well, Mike, just please keep up, okay?
All right, I'm sorry.
Diablo.
Yeah.
You know what, Max? Here's what I'm going to say is that now that you're on, you're a member of the Lovecraft eZine family, which gives us the right to tease you. So,
hell yeah.
So I was, as Mike pointed out.
We didn't even warn Tonya. She's in deep trouble and she doesn't even know it.
That's why Tonya left. Tonya was like, I'm out of here, fools.
Yeah.
See you later.
See you, losers.
Mike pointed out I fell into this hole of Gomer Pyle videos last week, which I hadn't watched since I was a kid in the 70s. And by the way, Max, I'm in Maryland, so I'm only a couple of hours from you, right?
Hey, can you guys keep this going for a minute while I go take a pain pill? I'm not having a good day. So yeah, just grill Max till I'm gone, or talk about Shazam while you're at it.
What you gotta do, Mike?
I ended up also watching some videos of the monkeys, and Max, you are Mickey Dolenz with curly hair, not the mop top Mickey Dolenz. So you're now to me the Mickey Dolenz of horror.
All right, I don't remember my monkeys quite well enough to remember which one had the big.
He was the drummer. The
drummer, got it. Okay, yeah. I've been loving actually the pandemic no haircut thing. It's just, if any of y'all have read Uzumaki in here, I feel like I'm turning into that. That's the Junji Ito comic where spirals begin to take over a town. And
it's bloody brilliant.
Everything, and I feel like that's a pretty good explanation of what's happening on top of my head here. So,
a bloody brilliant book, by the way.
Oh, one of my absolute favorites. It's just such a really fun fresh take on cosmic horror.
Yeah, Max. Now that Mike's out of the way and we can have a real conversation, what so what do you like what was it? Okay, so the tarot card is this really cool, the universe, speaks to you, as it were. But before that, what were the kinds of what are the formative influences for you? What were the things you read where you thought, oh man, this is the stuff?
See, this is awesome. You guys don't even need me.
Exactly. What? No, of course we need you, Mike.
Like, don't you have to go to the bathroom now or something?
Yeah, I would not be able to. At my age, I would not.
Calling? Oh, I think I hear her. Yeah.
At my age, I would not be able to go to the bathroom that quickly. It used to be a stream. Now it's just like Morse code. You know what I'm talking about, John.
Wow, that was okay.
Wow. For God's sake, is too much information.
Lovecraft eZine podcast.
Oh my God. Hey, why don't you answer Langan's question, Max?
Oh my God.
So in terms of formative influences, Lovecraft, obviously the big one. The idea of cosmic horror is something that always appealed to me very strongly for whatever weird unresolved traumas I have. And the mythos that he created is just so much fun. It's such a wonderful, flexible setting that you can take in so many sorts of different directions. So he was a big influence on me. Charles Addams, the cartoonist, I think was was another, on Little Max, a fairly formative influence. Just because Adams just like has so much fun with it. There's all this sort of great gloomy, the dark houses and the monsters and the family, and just all of it is just so much fun and so inviting, while at the same time having this sort of dark, creepy edge to it that I really enjoyed and responded to. Philip K. Dick, I think, is another writer who's a big influence on me. I like, again, going back to Lovecraft, the cosmic horror idea, the idea that like there's something wrong with space and time, to me has always been, a really fantastic story hook. The idea that we don't know who we are, that there are these mysterious dark forces that are manipulating our experience of the world.
That's where Philip K. Dick and Lovecraft just a little bit intersect there. I think it's really fascinating.
I would say even more than a little bit. I think that in there's some core ways where the ideas that those two are sort of dealing with and expressing in their fiction really do intersect with each other. They one takes it more in a sci-fi, one takes it more in a horror direction, but a lot of the central horrors I think are really parallel.
Yeah, it does seem to me you're right. It does seem to me that there is a real intersection between, and it seems like it becomes more apparent as time goes on, the intersection between Dick and Lovecraft, even in some weird way in terms of their personal lives, the way that they're writing for these pulp publications, or means of publication, and yet they're also writing these things that are deeply personal, that come out of these deep experiences or viewpoints, both of the world. I mean, the difference is Dick lives long enough to start to see some success.
Yeah.
Obviously Lovecraft doesn't, but
yeah.
And Max, if I want to ask you what I asked, what I asked earlier, to the previous guest. So, what I asked Tonia. So, what for you is horror? And I'm going to focus it more specifically on writing, because perhaps that's the medium that you focus on, right? And I asked this question of Laird Barron a couple of years ago, after having read a book on the philosophy of horror, wherein they interviewed authors and they each gave their opinion of what they thought horror is, and the aperture was so wide that they considered, say, a Gillian Flynn novel as horror, or some other kind of thriller or something. And my response, my immediate personal response was, well, if everything's horror, nothing is. And Laird agreed with that. And he had an interesting response to all of that. But I'm curious, what's horror to you?
So to me, I draw a pretty broad brush with it. I heard, and this is not original to me, I forget where I heard this, but I've heard that somewhere I read the horror genre is the only genre that's based around an emotion. So I think that any work, regardless of what sort of genre or what sort of medium it's in, any work where the primary artistic focus of it is evoking dread in the audience, that I would consider horror. So if there's a thriller that plays on that emotions, that where the person reading it is going to be frightened and dreadful throughout, then yeah, I think that's horror. If there's a book or a audio book or a painting that do the same thing, I'll call all of that horror. I think that it's that core intention of what emotional reaction you're trying to draw out.
What this makes me think of, maybe perhaps not directly related, but I heard one time the question, what does the sound of a footstep mean to you, outside your front door? If you're expecting a loved one home, then you probably have a joyful response to that, because you think it's most likely them. If it's 3 a.m. and you hear a door, hear a step outside your door, that's evoking terror or horror. So yeah.
That's a great point, Mike. But it would also, I would say, then it's how would you describe that as you experience that, right?
Yeah.
So reader, so that I know whether you're scared or whether you're expecting a loved one or whether you're expecting the mailman to come knock on your door because you're expecting a package, right?
Yeah. Speaking of packages, Carpenter, did you get that package for me?
No, it hasn't come in yet, Mike.
Oh, I was hoping to terrorize you on the show, but we'll have to wait till next week.
I already have a fez, just so you know.
It's not a fez, trust me.
Because I don't really need a fez. I got a fez.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's a nice fez.
So, yeah. Sometimes, as Matt said earlier today, the king of puns said, sometimes you have to talk fez to fez. So that's what we do on this show. Yeah, it's terrible, isn't it? It's not original.
It's no Lovecraft eZine, but it's still.
Oh yeah, that's pretty bad.
It is a your level bad joke, though.
We're gonna milk the eZine. So to speak, for a long time.
You're the one that came up with that, aren't you? You are never coming on here again, dude.
Oh, it's been nice knowing you guys.
I'm kidding. So you're going to be in Nightmares in Yellow, right?
I am, yeah. I got a story, The Dying Chorus, for that, which I am very excited about.
Yeah, for those who don't know, and I don't remember when it's coming out, sometime soon, but Nightmares in Yellow is a tribute anthology. In fact, I think in 2 parts to Joe Pulver. So I'm really looking forward to reading it. Did you ever have a chance to interact with Joe while he was alive?
Not at length. I'd read some of his anthologies. I think I'd interacted with him briefly at a Necronomicon.
Yeah,
but I didn't really know him except through his work.
Yeah, well, I miss him, but we do still have his work, so that's good. His writing and his editing work. I don't know what you guys asked when I was gone, but I was going to ask you what you're reading right now, and I noticed in that same interview with Farah that you mentioned 2 writers that I really admire, Emma J. Gibbon and Cody Goodfellow. We had Emma on a few months back, sometime back, and I remarked to her that her book title, Dark Blood Comes from the Feet, is such a great title. I mean, it's not something you could just pass on by. You have to see what it's about, you know.
It's a great title and a great book. I think that she does a really fantastic job of making like human scale horror, where, you know, a lot of what we're actually scared about in our own day-to-day lives isn't so much, you know, oh no, a Shoggoth is going to eat me. It's more things like, you know, oh, I'm gonna be rejected, I'm gonna be lonely. You know, these sort of day-to-day horrors, and she does, I think, just such a wonderful job of, you know, bringing in these like cool monsters and supernatural elements that we love. They're so fun and colorful, but then in tying them, you know, not to these, oh no, a ghost is after me fears, but oh no, you know, I'm alone or I'm scared or I'm depressed fears. Really fantastic stuff. I'm really looking forward to seeing what she does next.
And talk about Cody and what you've read of his, and just real briefly, because I want to keep, for those of you who are out there who have not read Cody Goodfellow, or maybe you haven't in a while and need to be reminded, I'm reminding you, he's out there. He's got some great work out there. And Max, what have you read of his recently?
So Cody Goodfellow is the author who has made it impossible for me to enjoy shrimp.
That's great.
Somewhere Cody just looked up and he was like, he got stronger, you know? And he's like, oh, like a character in a video game, you know? It's just,
and
cheap for me.
It's not even the story that you would think either. This was in his Strategies Against Nature collection. There's this brilliant sci-fi story in it, Nature's Mother, that I don't want to give away too much of it, but whenever I eat shrimp now, the texture of it brings me back to this scene in one of his books, and
we're gonna have to let Cody know about this, because
Read him at your own peril. I don't want to be blamed if anyone reads him on my recommendation, gets put off from some sort of food they enjoy. But, I did recently.
Damn that Max Stanton! I can't enjoy fish anymore.
I'll never have another Malamar.
I'm sorry, Max. Go on.
Oh yeah. So Cody recently released Un-America, yes, which is this really fun like dystopian sci-fi novel that I had a really good time with and heartily recommend.
Yeah, Jeff Thomas has got what, The American out there, and Cody's got the Un-America out there. So, you know, I don't know if that means anything, but there it is.
Don't put them next to each other on the shelves, lest you get some sort of matter.
Yeah, they'll fight. Guys, what other questions do we have for Max?
Now I'm trying to think about like who would win in a fight, Cody Goodfellow or Jeff Thomas. You know,
I'm pretty sure Cody would win. Well, no, Jeff does. Jeff has a rage problem. Jeff has a rage problem, and I don't think
Jeff has his daughter who takes karate, so he could like pick his daughter on Cody. You know, and
you know, I was thinking the other day as I was posting this on Twitter, John, that this is, you know, the next con I'm out with John, he knows martial arts, and I'm probably hosed. Probably gonna get my ass kicked for this.
You know, I've put on a lot of weight, Mike. I'm not as fast as I used to be.
Oh, that's good.
You know, I mean, if I hit you any more than once, like before, you just stepped away, and I was like, and I fell over.
Exhausting yourself.
I mean, right? Exactly. I was like, oh my god, I need a candy bar now.
All right. So, Max, what are you working on now? Or if you're at liberty to say or want to say.
Sure. So right now I've got a dystopian satire novel of my own that I am that I'm working on. That is complete, and I'm trying to find an agent or a publisher for that. And I don't want to get too much into the details of it, but the basic idea of it is what if Dr. Frankenstein of Mary Shelley's creation had lived and brought out his creation during the 90s .com boom. Well, short answer, he would have become very, very rich and very, very powerful with empire based on zombie labor. So you've got Frankenstein Industries, and you've got zombies driving cabs and stocking shelves and working factories and farms and policing the streets and fighting wars.
That's a pretty original idea.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's got a book like that, but every writer writes that story eventually.
It's one of those Joseph Campbell universal archetypes.
Right. Dr. Frankenstein zombie labor. Yeah.
In the 90s .com boom.
Right.
Well, so that's
damn it! Now I have to stop writing mine.
That's when it starts. Mostly, it takes place in the current day, after the technology's had a while to get accepted, after Frankenstein's got a chance to make the really big bucks. So that's the sort of big project that I've been working on for a few years now, actually, and that's pretty well in the can. So I'm looking to get that published, bring that to the next stage. I've got the pandemic has been terrible for my focus and productivity, but I do have a couple of short stories that I have been that I've been working on. There's one. It's called An Encounter at Candle Point. It's about a man who develops an erotic obsession with the Mothman, and
not just an obsession, an erotic obsession.
Yeah, and a very important qualifier there. And there's
but doesn't everyone also get around to writing that story eventually too? An erotic obsession with the Mothman.
An important phase in every horror writer's life.
Yeah, for me, it's Yog Sothoth. It's I don't know.
Yeah. So anyway, Max, what's the other one?
So I'm working on that. I'm working on a story that is that's loosely based on the spotted lanternfly infestation that we've got here in the Northeast. I guess I'm on kind of a bug kick lately. And
is that one also erotic?
That one is not erotic. This one will say
not yet anyway. Yeah,
for all audiences.
Yeah, it will be. Okay, so anyone else have questions for Max? Bridget, do you have anything?
Max, what's your process for writing? Do you dedicate certain hours of the day to where you are focused on that, or are you more intuitive? You do it as the need, or as you feel like you need to sit down to write? What do you do?
I wish I had that sort of focus and discipline to set out the writing time and arrange it that way. I do not have that sort of focus and discipline, so it's more of an intuitive thing, writing kind of as it comes to me. Actually, during the before times, I got the daily commute was a fairly good writing time for me. I would just have that time on the trolleys in the morning and the evening, which I just for some reason found a really productive time to knock out some fiction. That unfortunately I have not quite gotten back into that routine yet. But
so if you're staying home in the time of COVID, you lose that time then, right? So
weirdly, yeah, the day is not divided up the way that it used to be. And even as long as we've been in it, I still have not quite cracked the formula for where to carve the joint to get the writing time back in.
It's hard to get used to this, or it is. So.
That kind of segues into something, and I guess John might have an answer for this too. Is what?
No, absolutely not.
Just about what it's like releasing a book this year and trying to sort of build an audience and connect when like cons aren't a thing and everything's sort of on lockdown and we can't gather. I imagine it'd be a little different between Max and John, just because John already has a few, and this is Max's first book, I believe. And so what that experience has been like. I've had a couple of other friends who published their first books this year, and they say obviously no basis for comparison, but I'm still curious, what it felt like knowing, that your book was going to arrive into sort of this chaotic time.
Yeah, no, it's been tough. Certainly suboptimal. One thing that I had really been looking forward to with this book was, having a big party for it. There's a bookstore where I sometimes like to do readings. It's called the Novel Idea on West Passyunk. If you're in Philadelphia, certainly check it out. But I was really hoping to have, the big event there, have everyone come out, get some some catering and whatnot, no shrimp, and
no shrimp.
Just sort of have that day. And with COVID, we couldn't do that. We did an online reading instead, which was really fun, which was a really nice experience, but still, not quite the same thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it has been hard. Publishing and releasing the book in the middle of all of this, the sort of social media promotion and whatnot, I've still not quite gotten the hang of, but it is what it is, and
not every in a regular year, not every author goes to physical cons or does physical readings.
That's true.
So
yeah, I mean, I think it's also. From my perspective, my book came out from Word Horde, which is a small or independent publisher, small press, whatever, which is generally, that's pretty much what I published with. So
Children of the Fang, for anyone out there listening.
Children
of the Fang.
It because of that, I haven't done like multi-city book tours or whatever in the past anyway. So it's always been it's in the past, my releases, like the attention has always been like, oh, you're going to do a podcast or something like that. So I've sort of done the same thing. Don't get me wrong, I miss more than I can tell you going to this past summer, I'm almost always at ReaderCon, and I was going to be at Nikon as well this summer, and I definitely miss I miss those a surprising amount, to be honest. I mean, my wallet is probably like, thank you, but my wallet's like, thank you, COVID, but I certainly miss that in person, just hanging out and being stupid with my friends. Yeah, I know I've had friends who had bigger book deals, with big, well, now big four publishers, and yeah, they things just kind of fell apart. Which is not to say they weren't able to sell any books, but it is. It is to say that, I think you try as a writer, right, to if you can, to build relationships with like your local bookstore or whatever, and it's harder to do that when you can't go visit them.
Yeah.
So John, there's some things that tech just can't fix, right?
Sure.
Well, it's I guess like what we did. One of the things that Ross does with Word Horde that's pretty cool is when you have a book coming out from Word Horde, and they're going to be stocking and selling a certain number of copies, he sends book plates to you, and so you sign a few hundred of those and send them back to him. So that's something that he does like normally. But in the age of COVID, I guess it's particularly nice, I guess, for anybody who's like, I can't get to see this writer this year. Well, you just buy the book from Ross directly. It encourages you to shop at the publisher, which I think is always a nice idea for a smaller press.
Yeah.
And it allows you to get, like if I had a few people, just a couple really, who were like, one guy who was like, can John draw me a picture of this Clive Barker monster? And I was like, sure. And then I was like, what the hell monster is this? And anyway, it's a whole other story. But so it is possible to do that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's tough times, isn't it? What about you, Sean?
I mean, I was lucky. My book hit, last fall. So I actually did get to do a little bit of touring. I got to go to New York Comic Con and stuff, since my book was with one of the, at the time, Big Five. So, I was really fortunate that I sort of got in under the wire, getting to actually go to a bunch of indie bookstores, mostly here in the South, but a little bit, I did a little bit of traveling by plane. And with the paperback, I have no idea how that would have played out without COVID, but it was definitely a bummer because there were some local stores I would have liked to have done events at that I hadn't known about the first time around. But luckily, I think social media has been a godsend as far as like just being able to make relationships with other writers, but also readers, and just kind of make me feel more part of a community. So I feel like social media almost makes up for it, but I haven't gotten to go to many cons or anything either. That would be my big hope after COVID, is actually getting to go to a Stoker Con, for example, or any of the big, horror conventions. So I'm anticipating that opportunity, and really kind of sad that like I haven't gotten to do it yet, because I finally got my first book published. I'm ready to join the community, and then it's like, nope, you're locked in.
Yeah,
right.
And if you
but getting to talk to you guys and do stuff like this almost makes me feel like I'm not locked in. So it's kind of nice.
Yeah, that's why I originally started this. Originally I never did just audio only. It was just this, because I was like, okay, we only get to see each other once or twice a year. Let's do, this is the next best thing to being in the same room, because we're talking face to face. But I think especially now, I've had a lot of emails from people saying that they really look forward to watching it every week because of that. But you flip it around to the readers, and they're missing it too. So anyway, Max's book, and I really honestly can't recommend it highly enough, is A Season of Loathsome Miracles by Max D. Stanton, Stanton. So
Also, wait, one more question, Max. Yes. You said you were a pit bull wrangler. I have 3 pit bulls, so tell me about your pit bull story here, or like what's up with that?
All right, so we've got the 2 of them, Denver and Mina. Denver is he's the fellow you can see depicted here, and he is just the sweetest little fellow you could ask for. His sister Mina is not quite as she's more of a cat-like dog. A little still very cuddly, still very sweet, but a little bit more of that reserve and sass. And I think the best story I can tell you of them is of their first meeting and how they were introduced to each other. Mina's reactive. She usually doesn't care for other dogs, so we knew that we had to get a dog who would have just the right temperament where he could interact with her. So we found Denver through a rescue organization. He seemed like he would be a great dog to add to the family. We brought them around. We did some walks where where they were kept at a distance from each other, so Mina could see him, but wasn't brought quite so close that she would start losing her mind and barking at him. And then sort of slow introduction until finally we bring them together. Mina, she goes right up to Denver's ear. She begins barking directly in his ear as loud as she can for a good 5 minutes or so, like just solid. Rah, 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 rah. And he's just sitting there, just like, oh, okay, all right, okay then. That all sounds good. Just listening. She lays down the law of the land and the household. After she barked herself out, the 2 of them were fast friends from that point forward.
Yeah, you were like, if he puts up with that, he'll put up with anything.
Exactly, yeah.
So I think Bridget wants to read a little sample out of your book.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes, is that okay, Max?
By all means, please.
I don't really have a question. I'm just like fangirl nerding here. But I really liked your story, The Voyage of Jericho from Loathsome Miracles, and being a musician, I thought it was really cool. So I just wanted to read the first paragraph for the readers, because I think you do a great job of explaining so much in a few short words. So here we go. Janae eZine was playing Afro-punk blues at a cramped space station bar that reeked of synthetic marijuana and genuine piss when her troubles truly began. She glanced across the crowd, a motley bunch of red-eyed freighter pilots, off-duty mechanics in grease-stained over coveralls, and degenerate star hobos, and pondered how long it would take her to earn passage someplace else. It'd be at least 20 cycles even if she cut down to 1 meal, maybe less if she was willing to forgo her bunk at the Coffin Hotel and sleep rough at the docks. She had no head for figures, but was virtually a calculator when it came to the cruel math of poverty. Then, just as she launched into a classical piece by Sun Ra, she realized that one of the richest beings in the galaxy was watching her set with keen interest.
That's so great.
Yeah, so that's just the first paragraph, but what I'm going to try and use degenerate star hobos in random conversation, by the way. I think that's amazing. But I also, I think it's great. The classical piece by Sun Ra, it's like, okay, Sun Ra is something that we would listen to now. So for that to be considered classical music immediately puts the reader into how far in the future is this? And just little tricks like that. I think your writing is really wonderful, Max, and I look forward to your next.
Thank you so much. That's really like just like so heartwarming and wonderful and affirming to hear. Yeah, that story was a lot of fun to write. One of the things that I love about sci-fi in particular is that it's a chance to do world building, which I absolutely love. And I feel like, yeah, trying to, get the texture of the world right, get these little things like the Sun Ra classical piece in there, just build such a richer and more inviting story.
Awesome. Well, I liked it. I was telling my son earlier the synopsis basically of that story. He was like, whoa, I didn't expect it to go there. And I'm like, welcome to Cosmic Horror.
Well, before the 2-hour mark hits, and YouTube gets mad at me, I want to cover a couple things. First of all, again, it's A Season of Loathsome Miracles by Max D. Stanton. I also want to mention Sean's on the podcast today, obviously, because he asked a few questions. And A Cosmology of Monsters. If you've not read that yet, that's right now it's $4.99 on Kindle. So that's not a novella, that's a novel. So that's, to me, it's a really good price for a really great book. Also, I just released this from Lovecraft eZine Press. You would call my press a small press as opposed to a small press. But this is called The Dog by Raven Dag Morgan, and it's a very good novella. Hope you check it out. It's available in Kindle in print form. There's some other things that I wanted to cover in more detail, but that'll wait till next week. But I do want to say quickly that I saw a movie this past week that I really, really liked. And as always, when it comes to horror movies, at least, I would encourage people not to watch the trailer or read about it. Just go watch the movie. It's actually on Netflix, and it's called What Keeps You Alive. And boy, I'd love to have the actresses and the director on sometime if I can finagle it. But it's just a really, really good movie. Did any of you get a chance to see this yet? No?
No.
Yeah, well, check it out. It's called What Keeps You Alive. I actually stumbled onto it because I was looking for horror movies set near woods, because I think that's just such a great setting for horror movies, and stumbled across it that way. Pete, is Pete still here?
Nope,
he left. All right, we'll talk about that next week. Let's see here. Matt, you wanted to mention Richard Corbin, right?
Yeah, I had just a couple, because we're all members of the Lovecraft Circle in one way or another. And Richard Corbin was a comic book artist. He's got one book called The Haunt of Horror, where he adapts Lovecraft directly. Rat God was an original story of Lovecraft on an island helping a native woman. It's just completely off the wall. He was well regarded, and he just died very recently. And we won't have any more of his Lovecraft adaptations after that, but you can get both of these books off of Amazon. And then I also just wanted to mention the passage of another author, Franklin Seawright. He was really old school, doing pastiches like in the 70s and 80s. And so now his prose seems very dated when you've got strange things like The Fisherman, which are very cosmic, but not pastiche, whatever, you've got, so it's really kind of hard to go back and read these like I used to. But another reason to mention is his father, Richard Seawright, was a correspondent of Lovecraft. And when Franklin was born, Lovecraft congratulated the elder Seawright in a letter. So Franklin Seawright was the last living person who Lovecraft had actually mentioned in one of his letters. So that's another chapter of the Lovecraft Circle gone from us now. You can still get a collection either from Hippocampus Press, and there's another book out. I forget where it's from, but just these two people have passed. I thought we ought to give them at least a mention.
Yeah, and you mentioned The Fisherman, non-pastiche, kind of cosmic horror. The Fisherman by John Langan. I give John a lot of shit, but that really is one of the best books I've read in the past several years. The Fisherman.
Well, allow me to absolutely deflect that and say A Cosmology of Monsters is equally terrific.
No, your book's better.
The thing is, Langan also did the novelization of Meet the Spartans, so he's not a god.
Yeah, and in actuality, it's not a zero-sum game. You can actually read both books. So
yeah, the Cosmology. A Cosmology of Monsters is such a great book. It's so the character work in it is just amazing.
That family with the
the family, and I mean there's all this crazy Halloween stuff with this, and many years ago, I should say that the book struck a personal chord with me because many years ago, the previous house my wife and son and I were living in, we found out that some of my son's classmates didn't go trick-or-treating because of where they lived. It was a little sort of dodgy. And my wife was like, that is unacceptable. So she had us create this like sort of Halloween walk behind our house. And then when we moved into our new house, we had to turn the basement into the same thing. And so this novel deals with this in a much more elaborate kind of way. But it's so good. It really.
You really feel like you're there with that family.
The John Irving comparison, and I think that there's that's fair enough, but it stands on its own, absolutely.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt, but you're right. Stephen King made that John Irving comparison, and when you read the book, you really feel like you're there with that family, experiencing what they're experiencing. So,
wow. Thank you guys very much for saying that. I'm blushing over here. I don't know.
It also doesn't hurt that, like, when I look out the window, I've been seeing this huge hairy monster, but that's a whole other story, I'm just like, just like in Sean's book.
Your wife sounds like a really nice person, John. Is there a reason
my
she's
wife
with you?
Is fantastic. I don't know. I must have done something. Remember the song life. And The Sound of Music where they're like, I must have done something right because I'm with you. That's how I feel. Like possibly in a previous life, I was really good. I did, I like invented some kind of vaccine or something like that. And this go around, they were like, okay, listen, you'll get her.
Yeah. Well, that's how I feel about my wife. Our friend Kelly Young sent me a note and said that he loved Love and Monsters, Possessor, and Freak. Those are 3 horror movies recently released. And he also finagled an invite to watch the first episode of The Stand. And he's a big Stephen King fan, and he said that he really liked it. And I think the first episode comes out for the rest of us on the 17th. CBS All Access, I'm thinking it is. Yeah. So, but, oh man, I'm not personally don't know that I'll like Freak, but Possessor, and Love and Monsters looks great. I haven't seen any of these yet, so I don't know.
Possessor's the Brandon Cronenberg, right? Cronenberg's kid, or
yeah.
I've heard it's amazing.
Rich is holding up both of those books for those of you who are watching. I got you on the screen right now.
Yeah, and then the last thing, for Sean is, are you still setting aside time to write? I know you said before on the podcast that you had specific times that you had set aside to do your writing. Are you still doing that?
Yeah. I get up at 5 every day and write for 2 hours before I get ready for work.
Wow, that's like, I think I've heard of this. It's called discipline. I know.
It's the only way I can get a novel written. Otherwise, something shiny will distract me and I'll end up never writing another word. So, and doing it first thing in the morning guarantees it'll be done, because like if I get a hold of like my PlayStation first thing, then nothing else is happening that day.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, whatever else happens in that day, you can at least say to yourself, I got my 2 hours of writing done. So yeah, that's a very good point.
Yeah.
Or you got your PlayStation time in, which is
exactly
awesome.
Yeah.
Also important.
So anyway, everyone, please remember to listen to Tonia's Nightlight podcast. I don't know why I'm having such trouble with this. Matt, you want to talk about the prize real quick?
Yes, remember, the prize is a little yellow book of fever dreams signed by Caitlin Kiernan herself. Send an email to ezineprizes@gmail.com and put yellow in the subject heading. We usually draw roughly 4 weeks after the show, so you got plenty of time to get it in. And it'll be a nice New Year's present for somebody.
Yeah, so nightlightpod.com is Tonia's podcast. And then again, we talked about with Max about a season of Loathsome, Miracles, Max D. Stanton. Cosmology of Monsters is only $4.99 on Kindle if you're a Kindle person. I meant what I said. The Fisherman is a really, really great book. The Fisherman by John Langan. If you have not read it,
it's too late. It's too late. The damage is done.
I know.
How hard you try,
I'm just trying to mitigate somewhat.
This is no, it's not. I'm sorry, it's not happening. Yeah. My revenge is coming.
Can't you just take a compliment? God damn it.
See, John, this is like a Hallmark movie. This is a slight misunderstanding. You get together, it's all okay, and then you can teach them the real meaning of Christmas.
No. This is. Did you see that somebody posted on social media the other day that they think that one Hallmark Christmas movie every year should end with like slaughter, and they shouldn't tell you which one it is. Idea. So this is that Hallmark movie. Have you seen the ad for that new the Bob Odenkirk movie, where it was made by the guys who made John Wick? I mean, I'm serious. I thought this was a joke, and he's basically Bob Odenkirk decided he wanted to do his John Wick role. That's what we're talking about here, Davis.
Okay,
John can send you shrimp, Mike.
You know what? Don't read The Fisherman, then. Don't read it. All right. Well, thanks everybody for watching. Thanks for listening. And next week we have I don't have it in front of me. I'm sorry, but we will have a show. So thanks, guys, and we'll see you next week.